morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Julia Almager, and I will be your worship leader today. Located on the ancestral lands of the Adena, Hopewell, Miamia, and Shawnee people, our urban community welcomes all with love, supports learning and spiritual growth, serves our wider community, and works for justice, equity, and inclusion. We are glad you are here with us this morning, whether in person or virtually. During the service, you may hear about programs or other items of interest. If you would like to learn more about these events, our community, or the Unitarian Universalist faith, please contact us at member.care@firstuu.com. We begin our time this morning by lighting our chalice, the chosen symbol of our faith, with these words by Mahatma Gandhi. A principle is a principle, and in no case can it be watered down because of our incapacity to live it in practice. We have to strive to achieve it, and the striving should be conscious, deliberate, and hard. And now, please turn to your neighbors and greet them briefly.
The Voice That Won the Vote: How One Woman's Words Made History, by Elisa Boxer. Illustrated by Vivian Middleberger. A quick note before we begin. Today's story is a true story about how white women won the right to vote in the United States. A popular myth in the United States is that all women won the right to vote in 1920, which may be why today's author never mentions race and says women in place of white women throughout this story. However, history tells us that in the fight for suffrage, Black voices, Indigenous voices, and voices from other people of color were regularly silenced. In fact, it wasn't until 1943, when the Magnuson Act was passed, that Chinese Americans won the right to vote, and all Indigenous people didn't have the right to vote until 1948, when Arizona and New Mexico finally started complying with the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. And still, Black people didn't win the right to vote until 1965, when the Voting Rights Act was established, finally prohibiting voter discrimination based on race. It's been nearly 60 years since then, but sadly, many are still excluded. The fight for everyone to have a voice and a vote continues. A vote is a voice. This is what I believe in. This is what I stand for. This is what matters to me. This is who I am. This is who I choose to lead my town, my state, my country. In 1920, women were still denied that voice. For nearly 75 years, they had organized meetings, marched in parades, carried signs, and made speeches demanding their right to vote. "Say yes to suffrage," they shouted. They wore yellow roses. Yellow means yes. But they were silenced. Other voices drowned them out. Troublemakers. Uncivilized. Female voters will surely cause chaos. Women with a voice in politics? Nonsense. The only vote a woman needs is the vote to choose a husband. But nestled in a valley on a farm in East Tennessee, one woman was determined to have a voice and a vote. Feb Byrne was known around town as smart and strong-willed. At a time when most women didn't go to college, Feb did. She graduated and became a teacher. She read newspapers, magazines, and books. She loved to learn. Feb Byrne was especially fascinated by laws and the people who made them. Every year on Election Day, the men who worked on her farm would head to town hall to cast their votes. And every year, Feb Byrne would watch them go. She was sick and tired of staying shut out of the process. So one day, she sat on her front porch with some paper, a pen, and a plan. "Dear son," she began. A few days later, a letter arrived on the desk of the youngest lawmaker in Tennessee. His name was Harry Byrne. And on that hot August day, he watched the state capitol fill up with reporters, photographers, and people from all over the country who had come to witness history. America was on the verge of change. 35 states wanted women to vote, but the country needed 36 to make it law. It all came down to Tennessee, the last state left to vote. If lawmakers in Tennessee said yes, women across the nation would finally be allowed to cast their ballots. If Tennessee lawmakers said no, well, things would stay exactly the same. It was a tie. They would have to vote again. Harry Byrne was ready to stand firm for what he believed in. He had voted against women's suffrage in the first round, He knew that most of the people who had elected him hated the idea of women voting. Many of those people were in the audience. They knew they could count on Harry Byrne. After all, the proof was right there on his jacket, a red rose, the symbol of keeping women in the home and out of the voting booth. The state capitol was filled with more red roses than yellow roses that day, and everyone knew what that meant. Someone would break the tie with a no. It was time to vote again. Someone did indeed break the tie. Harry Byrne. "Yes," he said. "What?" The officials in charge asked the young lawmaker to repeat himself. Obviously, he'd made a mistake. Clearly, he'd gotten confused. But there was no mistake. He was not confused. Harry Byrne wanted women to vote. No one could believe it. Many of the women who had organized meetings, marched in parades, carried signs, and made speeches were in the audience wearing their yellow roses. They gasped and cried and hugged each other. But why did Harry Byrne change his vote? "I know that a mother's advice is always safest for a boy to follow," he explained. And then, from his jacket pocket behind that red rose, Harry Byrne pulled out a note from his mother, the one Feb Byrne had written on her front porch. The people who had elected Harry Byrne were shocked and furious. A grown man listening to his mother? "We'll show him," they thought. "We will not vote for Harry Byrne in the next election." "Byrne ruined in politics," declared the headlines. Harry Byrne understood. He knew that by giving women the right to vote, he was giving up his seat in the Tennessee House of Representatives. The people in his district just weren't ready for a leader who wanted women to vote. He told newspaper reporters, "I am happy simply because I followed my conscience. It kept telling me women are people." And voting, he knew, should be the right of all people. He thought again of his mother. "So I made the choice," he said, explaining that standing up for what he believed in was more important than winning the next election. It took courage, and courage has a way of making things right. Election day came. When the campaigns were over and the votes were counted, the new state representative was announced. Harry Byrne! He kept his seat in the Tennessee legislature, kept standing up for equal rights. And no one was prouder than the woman who, without speaking a word, gave all women a voice. If you would like to know more about this story, or the timeline for women's suffrage in the United States, pause to read this page. The fifth principle in Unitarian Universalism states, in simple language, that we all have a voice, and that we all have a responsibility to use that voice. I wonder, where do you make your voice heard?
This is the time when we contemplate the joys and sorrows that are on our hearts. We use stones to represent our joys and sorrows. The water represents the love of community. We drop a stone in the water to seek the softening of our sorrows or the amplification of our joys. All the individual joys and sorrows come together in one bowl of water so that they can be symbolically shared and borne by us as a collective community. I invite you now to come forward, up the side aisles and down the center, to amplify your joy or to soften your sorrows. Today, we are going to learn why Unitarian Universalists have joined forces to do non-partisan political work for the upcoming election. First, the Unitarian Universalist Association President, Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray, will explain why this work is faithful, moral action. The second speaker, National UU The Vote campaign manager, JaZahn Hicks, will tell us more about the campaign. Then, following the video, you'll learn how you can UU the vote.
Hello, friends, dear ones. I'm zooming in from my apartment on the land of the Massachusetts people who still live here, and I honor their ancestors, their history, and their present, and recognize that I live on occupied land. Well, these are challenging days. We all know that. And we also know that this is not the first crisis of democracy in our country's history, right? It's not the first time that UUs have joined in national movements for justice and for political power with and for communities suffering under oppression and white supremacy. This is how we live our faith in the world, with courage, with love, with commitment, and with faith. Our ancestors, like Reverend James Reeb, Viola Luzo, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and so many others embodied our UU values when they fought for voting rights, not as a political maneuver to support a party or elect a particular leader, but because we as UUs affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And we know that voting is an expression of a person's dignity. It reminds us that every voice matters, every person matters, every voice is needed. And so today we are still in this fight to expand, protect, and live into a multiracial democracy and a system that is accountable to Black and Indigenous people and to communities of color, that is accountable to women, to trans and non-binary people, to disabled people, and to poor people. Over the past many years, we have witnessed hateful movements working to strip our communities of their rights, their livelihood, and even their lives. The efforts we witness across the states right now to deny trans kids access to life-affirming healthcare, to take away women's agency, to control our reproductive lives, to deny the teaching of the United States' painful history, to restrict voting rights and make voting more difficult for communities of color, for elders, for seniors, for disabled people, and of course, the doubling down on the criminalization of BIPOC communities and immigrants, and the shielding of police and the powerful from accountability, the ongoing exploitation of the planet and the polluting of our communities for profit. All of these issues, they are not separate. They are not separate issues. They are interlocking efforts, the foundation of which is white nationalism and white supremacy, and they are aimed at consolidating power and wealth in the hands of the few instead of the many. These are movements rooted in authoritarianism and rooted in the denial of the humanity of every person. This became so clear in the Trump presidency. And although some of our leaders have changed, thank goodness, the threats to human dignity, to our rights, to democracy remain, and they are deepening in states across the country. In 2020, UU the Vote was a call to justice, to spiritually grounded collective action to defend and expand democracy. Together, Unitarian Universalists wrote over 1 million postcards. Together, we contacted over 140,000 voters in Michigan alone. Together, we had over 800 UUs volunteer in the Georgia Senate runoff when everyone was exhausted. We still showed up. That is faith. That is faithful, empowered action. Together, in UU the Vote 2020, we contacted over 3 million voters across the country. We supported people in long lines waiting to vote, and we showed up again to defend those votes and ensure that they were counted. We made measurable differences in states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, and Georgia. We did this by showing up with resources and people in solidarity with frontline communities. We didn't do this alone. We did it in deep partnership with those most impacted, amplifying and bring resources and volunteers to the work. Today, we continue this work in 2022. UU the Vote 2022, we are growing our movement and deepening our connections with frontline partners to build a radical, multiracial democracy where all have access to the ballot, because we know that every voice matters and every voice is needed. We will not be silent, right? We will not give ourselves to inaction and complacency. We will show up with love, with courage, with faith, and ensure that all communities, including BIPOC communities, LGBTQIA+ communities, poor communities, all communities have the power to determine their futures and to build a future where all can live with dignity and where we all can thrive. Love, bless each and every one of you. I am so excited for what we've already built and how that will deepen and grow in 2022. These elections matter. Thank you to all of you who've answered this call. Welcome to everyone who's new today and joining this powerful movement. Remember that we have everything we need. We are powerful when we lean into relationship, into partnership, and in and with one another. We have everything we need. It is right here, and we are ready to go.
I am so honored and humbled to be the campaign manager for UU The Vote. I am so excited to show you what we plan on doing in 2022. It's going to be even bigger than all the great work that you accomplished in 2020. You did amazing. And what led me to UU The Vote was, and we're going to get into it in the slides, but you all fight on a different level than the rest of the country. You are linked by your faith, by your principles, by your values, and you can ignore the partisan noise and do the work that needs to be done to advance love and hope and faith and joy and community and dignity and justice and democracy. And you can do it as a community. And there's not many places in the country that can do that. So I was just drawn. As a man of faith myself, I was raised in church. And I find myself to be really a faithful person. It's just so refreshing to know that we don't have to lead with polarization and politicalization. We can lead with hope. We can lead with love. And when we do that, then we can fight on these different levels and get people justice that they deserve. So let's talk about what we are planning to do in 2022, and we need everybody's help. We need everyone on here to at least do one phone bank, and we'll get into that later, and we're going to talk about that. So I think we have a couple of slides, and I'm going to walk through the strategy so far. Great. UU The Vote, the prophetic church makes history and is not just pushed around by it. Like I said, you all get to fight on a different level. You rise above all the noise, and it's just a completely different plane. You drive the narrative. You change the narrative of what faith-based organizing can be. You did it in 2020, and I just know together we can do it again in 2022. So let's get into it a little bit. UU The Vote 2022 program landscape and opportunities. And that's a great little meme of Joe Manchin, our favorite person in the world. Threats to democracy, lack of voter democracy protections due to voter suppression legislation and gerrymandering, political polarization and apathy. Focus on issue and values will be essential to mobilizing folks and turning them out. Local culture wars, national and state trainings and tools to engage in critical local fights, school boards, anti-trans bills, and other things. Appetite for community organization, community-focused organizations continue to absorb new people ready for new visions and culture of organizing. UU The Vote, I have a question for you. What is at stake in 2022? So you're here because you believe that something is at stake. So what is at stake? What issues are on your mind right now that are in your heart that you want to fight for? And while you're thinking of that, what is possible? You know what's at stake. So what can we do about it? How can we fix it? How can we change it? How can we push in another direction? I'm loving all these answers. Democracy, civil rights, truth, freedom, dignity, equity. Yeah. Remind people of their power. That's so important. That's what another thing I love about UU The Vote is you build organizing power in communities and you keep it there. And it's so important that we give power back to the communities and show them that they can organize. The future, healthcare, rights, democracy, climate, yes, going forwards, childcare, all that. So what is possible? What is possible? Defunding fear, great one. Good. Protect trans lives, 100%. Women's rights, voters' rights. We can do this. Huge voter turnout. That's the plan. Empowerment, love for all. That's great. That's great. Okay, so let's talk about how we can do it. There we go. So our program focus for this year, ballot measures and training on values-based conversations, big get out the vote in key states that we're going to show you in a second. Election defense and protection. The right to vote is sacred and it should be defended and protected any chance that we get. That's new this year, in-person, door-to-door canvassing, having real conversations with real people in real time is going to be incredibly important this time around. Strengthening our partnerships in our key states and fellowships for young adults and BIPOC UUs. So here's the map of some of the places that we're looking at. Leveraging power for election day. These are some of our tier ones, and that's Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Values to the front ballot initiatives that we're going to be keeping an eye on, and we're working toward: Colorado, Texas, Florida, Kentucky, Virginia. And then building for the long haul. This is places where we're going to be keeping the pressure up: California, Illinois, New York, Ohio, so on and so forth. That's the map, all the places that we're going to be focusing on this time around. So everything you need to get started is at uuthevote.org. I'm going to say that again, uuthevote.org. Go right now, type it out, put it in your phone, keep it on your a tab, keep that saved in your tabs. It's going to be so important to get our work done. And then while you're getting it, while you're tabbing it, while you're pinning it, share it to 5 people. Get 5 people that you know and share it and say, get involved at uuthevote.org.
So now, First Church members will briefly introduce you to the 3 UU the Vote projects that our church has chosen to do and give you a taste of why each of us values this work. JaZahn mentioned phone banking, which we decided not to do in committee here at church, but if anybody is interested in phone banking, as he said, you can go to uuthevote.org to find out more, or any of us here can put you in touch with people who are phone banking. So I will start the discussion of the committees. I am involved with UU the Vote and voter contact initiatives because I think that our lives and our democracy depend on the outcome of this upcoming election. The rights that my children and many others enjoy depend on decisions that are made by our representatives and through our electoral choices. I want to vote whenever I can. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that women in various communities could not vote. And I want to encourage others to do the same. We will write letters this year that are provided by Vote Forward, as we did 2 years ago. So if you wrote letters in 2020, this will be the exact same process. Vote Forward is a nonprofit, non-partisan organization. Its mission is to empower grassroots volunteers to encourage their fellow citizens in underrepresented communities to vote. Jan Connolly and I will provide training to anyone interested in writing Vote Forward letters the evening of August 11th. And in a nutshell, this is how it works. We can provide letters and addresses to volunteer letter writers, or people can download the addresses and letters at home. So we can work collectively, or you can work individually, or both. Once each letter is printed, we add a sentence or two to personalize it and to explain why we find voting to be important. So this is very easy and very fast. We can write many letters. We'll keep track of the number of letters that are written, and we will mail all of them on October 29th. We have lots of time to write many letters. If you are interested, please contact me. If you have any questions, please contact me, and please consider joining the Zoom training on the 11th. Also, after church today, we will start writing letters and postcards, so please join us then in the Ellen Hall room. And now I would like to welcome Jan Connolly up, who will talk to you about postcard writing.
Morning, everybody. The reason I have gotten involved in this effort, doing the postcarding, is because I, like probably a lot of you, have felt a little despondent lately about how unjust our democracy is operating. And I listened recently to Congressman John Lewis's words, the late John Lewis's words, who was asked about hope. Where do you find hope? And he said, we must engage in finding a way out of no way. We must engage in finding a way out of no way. And that feeling of there's just no way out of this cannot consume us. And a simple little postcard, just like the stones in this water, you think it makes just a little movement, a little ripple, but little ripples all together form a huge wave, don't they? So why did I choose postcards? Because to me, they're so immediate. They're such a quick read. They're unusual in your mailbox. They're not another letter to open. You see the bright and colorful message on the back of it, and how could you not engage with that? And they're all handwritten. And so if the person who receives the postcard looks at a handwritten, colorful message, I can't imagine that they can't engage in that and feel the true human connection. And isn't that what we want? Human connections. So, as Julia pointed out, I can supply you with everything that you need for this and walk away today to do some at home. And we ordered 500 postcards, which seems like a lot. But the first 3 people who contacted me collectively have already taken 220 of those postcards. So won't it be wonderful if I have to call and order more postcards? And we can keep this going. You have plenty of time to get them written because they don't have to be mailed until, between September the 5th and October 1st. So you've got plenty of time to do it. So I hope you stop by the table today and pick up some supplies to take home or sit there and write some cards just to get familiar with how to do it. And also we are going to have the training. Julia's going to be training on Zoom for letter writing, and then I'll do a portion of it for postcard writing. And you can always call me or email me, and we'll get this thing going. So I encourage you to risk a little writer's cramp, and it'll do our democracy good.
Good morning. I'm Patty Kelly, and the reason I'm involved in UU the Vote is because I believe that American democracy has the potential to bring equal rights and opportunities to everybody. And as a UU who values the inherent worth and dignity of every person, I believe that everybody should have a voice and a vote. Now, in the past, I voted regularly, but I guess I kind of thought that the wheels of democracy would keep on moving somehow miraculously alone, or the bus would be driven by somebody else. And in 2008, I realized, you know what? If I want to make a difference, if I want to see change, then I have to do something about it, in addition to voting. And since then, I've been trying to do my little bit to do that. I grew up in a small town, and I went to Memorial Day parades and Veterans Day parades and services, and I would get choked up at patriotic songs. I still do sometimes, but for a different reason now, because I can see a future that I don't want to see if we don't do something about it. So I invite you to join us. You've already heard about 2 of our efforts, and the last one that I'm working with is voter registration. It doesn't help to get out the vote if people aren't registered. That is the fundamental thing we have to do, is get more people registered so then we can get them to vote and have their voices be heard. And what we're doing at First UU is a couple of things. First of all, we are registering people at Shiloh Food Pantry on Mondays and Wednesdays, starting a week from tomorrow. And Karen Rohrer and I are heading that up. We already work at Shiloh. People are familiar with Shiloh. We can get a lot of people registered there. We are aware, of course, that not everyone is available during the weekday, and so we want to give you access to other voter registration drives that you might want to participate in. So Debbie Davidson, who's on our Social Justice Committee, is going to compile information on other nonpartisan voter registration drives that you can participate in. And if you would like to be on her email list to receive that information, please sign up outside in the hallway, where I also have the sign up for Shiloh. We also have a great additional resource this year. Carol Wammeldorf, who has been lighting our chalice today, has had training in helping to help voter registration in underrepresented communities. And she's going to give us some tips and provide some other expert advice in a Zoom meeting next Sunday afternoon at 5:30. So the links for all of these Zoom meetings, incidentally, are in the emailed church newsletter that went out this morning. So you can do that. You can sign up on the Sign Up Genius link for voter registration, also in a link in that newsletter. So as the Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray tells us, this is faithful moral action, and we really hope that you join us. Thank you.
Now, let's sing. We will sing Come and Go With Me, which is number 1018 in the Teal hymnal. Please rise as you are willing and able, and join us in singing this call for freedom and justice. Our Share the Plate collection for the month of August will go to First Church's UU the Vote campaigns to purchase supplies and postage. The more generous you are, the more voters we can reach. We'd like to thank Ellen Wathen for the flowers today. They were donated in honor of summer wildflowers. Giving to First Church is easy. You can text the word GIVE to 513-717-7373. If you have access to our Breeze As we conclude today's service, I will repeat the call to action from Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray to remind us why our faith calls us to work to strengthen our democracy. For Unitarian Universalists, this is faithful moral action because democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote are at the very heart of our 7 principles. This work is about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is about restoring right relationship with the planet. It is about our commitment to justice and equity for all people. We are called to courageously embody the deepest values of our faith with our hearts, bodies, and spirits while building toward an abundant future in which all are free and flourishing. We will extinguish our chalice by saying these words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Don't you